Welcome back to The Breakfast Show. Well, coming up, we'll be live in Florida to hear about the clean-up operation following Hurricane Milton. But first, Rob Powell here with me to discuss the latest news in Westminster, or today. I guess the focus is on Edinburgh. Just remind us why Pat McFadden was coming from there today.
So it's the first meeting of what's been called the Council of the Nations and Regions. It's something that was promised in the Labour manifesto. The idea for it was actually dreamt up by the former Prime Minister Gordon Brown. He did a big constitutional review and suggested a body like this. I think he envisaged it having a kind of legal underpinning. So this is a bit of a watered-down version, I think, of what Gordon Brown wanted. But it brings together the First Ministers from Northern Ireland, Scotland and Wales, the English regional mayors as well, along with the Prime Minister and, of course, Pat McFadden and others there as well.
But not the Special Envoy.
But not the Special Envoy for the Nations and Regions, Sue Gray, who Pat McFadden said was taking a short break as she'd been through a lot.
In terms of what's also on the agenda today, the announcement of these fresh investments, I mean, it's also meant to start what's going to be a big week for potential investment announcements with a summit next week.
Yeah, I think they've been trying to sort of shift the tone maybe of the conversation from the kind of downbeat talk about fiscal black holes to maybe a more optimistic view around investment that I think started about a week ago today with those in announcements about carbon capture and storage. There was a big visit that Sir Keir Starmer did to Liverpool. As you say, the investment summit coming up as well, and they've sort of gathered together a load of numbers basically of private sector investment. I mean, relative, as you were pointing out to Pat McFadden, sort of relatively meaningless, I guess, and whether you
I'm all for it. If just take out the words "up to" and lower the number if you have to, and make it concrete. All governments do this. All parties do this. It's tedious and it's repetitive. But what's the point of saying "up to" with no lower bound? I mean, it could be zero.
And I think when you maybe talk to Conservatives, they'd sort of point out a few of these and say, well, can you really be taking credit for all of this? Maybe some of this was in the pipeline under the previous government as well. You do wonder whether this investment push is sort of putting the cart before the horse, given that we don't know what's coming in the budget. And one of the big things that's causing a degree of uncertainty for businesses, for investors, is what exactly Rachel Reeves is going to unveil. So you can sort of gather all these investors together and trumpet this stuff as much as you like. You could then go and ruin all that good work by putting the wrong stuff in the budget, quite frankly.
And he's right. We are going to speculate right up until October the 30th about what's going to be in the budget.
Gleefully.
Rob, great stuff. Thank you. Emergency workers in Florida are continuing rescue efforts in the state after Hurricane Milton brought 120-mile-per-hour winds and up to 18 inches of rain to parts. Now the clean-up operation begins, which could take months. Bringing in now Jose Garcia, who's the chief executive of Rebuilding Together Tampa Bay. Thanks so much for joining us, Jose. I mean, clearly this was a major hurricane and the damage is extensive. Gauge for us, though, if it is worse than worst fears or fractionally better?
Well, actually, first, thank you for having me. I just got home after an entire day out there in the field, and I still don't have power in my own house. That's what I'm taking this call in my car. Things are very bad. Actually, we already knew it was pretty bad, but it wasn't until now, today, as we were in the field, that we realized that how much of damage has Milton created, especially for those that were impacted already by Helene. So it was just basically more fuel on the fire. And we're just hoping that there are not going to be any systems or any more rain throughout the weekend, which it doesn't look like. So allow us to help people as much as possible. It just wasn't, it was again expected, but it wasn't, I don't think we realized how bad it was going to be once all this water came through to Tampa.
How long do you think it will take for your city, your region, to get back to normal?
Well, the impact, which is, there's these two storms, because we need to talk about the two storms. Milton was just, again, more fuel on the fire. Is as similar as the impact that Ian made in Fort Myers, Lee County, in Florida 2 years ago. We still are working in Fort Myers. We repaired approximately 1,100 houses last year, and we're close to 500 so far this year. So we think obviously to get to some sense of normality where people will be able to go back to work and everything will be accessible, like fuel and food and water and all those kind of things will be in the next 2 or 3 weeks. But the actual reconstruction, rebuild of all these areas will take approximately 2 or 3 years. Because at the end of the day, homeowners are going to have to wait for insurance and for FEMA. And if they don't get any help from any of these two avenues, then enters organizations like ours who trying to bring them some sense of normality and make the houses more livable again, but not necessarily totally repaired. We're talking about years.
Are you getting all of the help and support that you would expect that you need from both the state and federal government?
Well, it's too soon to talk about the state and federal help. I can tell you that when we have Ian, my organization alone received close to $15 million, 15, to help homeowners and to help residents to all the reconstruction. So the answer to your question is yes. The key here will be when.
In terms of how you prepare for these types of tornadoes, do you feel like the houses and other infrastructure could be better prepared, better protected, or is it impossible to protect against a tornado, a hurricane of the scale of Milton?
Well, to say impossible is not completely the right word. It is difficult, but it's possible. Again, my house is about 20 years old. It's in perfect conditions. It didn't get impacted, but there is no power. And by not having power, it's very uncomfortable. The ones who are truly impacted are the houses built 50, 60, 70 years ago. Some of them wood frame, not even block frame, and those are impacted. I think as the storms come by, the codes are changing, new construction is changing and is getting stronger. But keep in mind, once again, that as we get more stronger homes, we also getting stronger storms and more one behind the other, which is what it constantly put us in a risk of damaging and impact and catastrophes and disasters. So I think a time will say how better we are getting with building infrastructure and building homes in this area or any other area in the country.
Jose Garcia, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
It's now time for the sport. So James is here with me. James, I hate international break at the best of times. But when we lose and Saka gets injured, I just despair.
I knew you'd mention Saka. You're really disappointed, isn't it? I think any injuries to your team that you support, your club players, during the international break, it hurts so much more than seeing them if they get injured while playing for your club, if that makes sense.
Well, of course. And particularly when these international breaks seem to come particularly thick and fast just when we've pivoted back to the Premier League season. And I know this one is not a friendly, but it's sort of a friendly, isn't it? The Nations League?
The Nations League's not now. There's a bit more riding on it now. It determines your seeding for your qualification for the European Championship, so it actually does
Someone
have
wants to get good access with UEFA just here.
100%.
The Nations League.
Absolutely.
Anyway.
But look, it was great. And it was for Greece, it was sensational last night. And we should add that as well and make sure that it was. They were brilliant and they did it in memory of George Baldock, who sadly lost his life this week. So that was great for Greece, but for England, it wasn't very good. We'll be hearing from the England manager after what was a very disappointing night at Wembley.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality. Getting more people more active. Live life with Vitality.
When I joined Wigan, I needed time. The first thing they asked me is to change the style of play. But I need time to change the style of play. I need time to recruit players who could play the style of play. I need time to do coaching session to to improve the players. People expect you to come and then change everything like that. It doesn't work like that. When you want to play the style of play that everyone wants to play, beautiful football, you need the players who can do that. As coaches or managers, we need to keep pushing. Whenever we have opportunity to do well, we have to do well, of course. But before you do well, you need the opportunity, of course.
Being the first black African to manage a professional English club, how proud are you of that? How do you reflect on that now?
Very proud. Very, very proud. Of course, I knew that it was going to be a huge challenge. But in my life, I had a lot of setbacks, I had a lot of tough moments, tough time. But I think what is very important for me is my resilience. During my career, I had some tough time, but never give up. I kept pushing, and that's what I'm gonna do, and thinking that I was the first black African is huge, but I haven't finished the job. And I'm hungrier to go back. There's no many black managers who have the opportunity and had the time to work. We had Patrick Vieira, who done a really good job at Crystal Palace when he joined, and then get sacked after. We hope that we can be treated the same. I think it's important to look where you go, but as you know, there's no many opportunities out there.
Do you really want to crack it in England, or would you be happy to manage elsewhere, abroad or internationally?
I would prefer to work in England because that's where I did all my career as a football player. I know the environment, I know the culture, I know the people a little bit more than other countries. If there's an opportunity maybe abroad, I'm thinking more about it, definitely. Being an ex-player doesn't mean that you're going to be a top manager, and you have to prove, and I'm willing to prove. I just need some opportunities.
Who do you take advice from? Who do you ask for help? Who do you still learn from? As when we're talking about coaching at the moment, who are some of your kind of mentors and heroes?
Of course, Arsene Wenger. Still talking to Mr. Wenger. Speak to Brendan Rodgers, of course.
What advice have they given you in the last year or so?
Just try to keep fit. Keep your mind busy. Do a lot of gym, sport. Look after your health really first, and then keep applying for jobs. And that's the advice that they give me. Looking after yourself, your faith, and then keep applying for jobs. When I have a task to do, or when I work for somebody.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality.
James, thanks so much for that. Well, still to come here on The Breakfast Show. With homelessness on the rise, we speak to charity Shelter about what needs to change to help people off the streets.
Weeknights on Sky News.
This is your chance. Tell people.
Welcome to the Politics Hub.
Our police force has apologised. If you want to find out about Grimsby, you come to the docks.
I'm live in Jerusalem.
Are you not concerned that that could lead to all-out war?
Hello there, good evening. There are fears of an upsurge in violence. What's at stake here?
You are watching the press preview, a first look at the front pages as they arrive.
I'm David Blevins, and I'm Sky's senior Ireland correspondent. It takes 60 minutes to cross the Irish Sea. It took the British monarchy a century. I've spent 30 years reporting the journey from conflict to peace.
The political parties of Northern Ireland have reached agreement.
If there's anyone who might know how to fix Northern Ireland's devolved government, it's the American architect.
Changes in circumstance require changes in approach.
The end of the political stalemate, the start of a new chapter for Northern Ireland.
I confirmed that I am willing to take up the office of First Minister. My election to the post of First Minister demonstrates the change that's happening on this island.
Catholics and Protestants on different sides, now facing the same threat.
If we both contract COVID-19 and end up in hospital, religion's nothing.
People here are adept at finding hope amid adversity. That's the spirit of a place that punches way above its weight.
We help you understand the world with us. A toxic blue-green algae now poisoning Loch Ness. It's breaking your heart what has happened here.
It is. This is a vital resource, a national treasure, now fighting for its very life. They are effectively surrounded by Northern Ireland, and that makes this the most unlikely of international frontiers.
If there's a hard border, I think it'll cripple the country.
Winter is coming. Welcome to Winterfell. It's an iconic location in this globally acclaimed drama. Ophelia was the most powerful hurricane this far east in the Atlantic on record.
Sky News, the full story first.
I say, bring it on.
With America divided and tensions running high, get ready for an election like no other.
Join our teams as we follow the campaign trail as America decides.
We will win, win, win. Get closer to the action this US election with full reaction and analysis.
Sky News, the full story first.
Welcome back. With the number of rough sleepers across the UK rising once again, there are questions as to how the new Labour government will approach the issue of homelessness. I'm joined now by the Director of Campaigns at Shelter, Mari McRae. A very good morning to you, Mari. Thanks so much for joining us. Snapshot for us how bad the situation is, first of all.
Well, it's absolutely shameful that in this day and age, in a modern and a wealthy society, that people should have to spend the night, sleeping in a doorway, sleeping in a tent on the street instead of in a safe home. But unfortunately, due to rising evictions, skyrocketing rents, and a lack of truly affordable social homes, we're seeing that this is becoming more and more common. Certainly at Shelter, we've been absolutely inundated in need for our services, and that is also reflected in the statistics. We've seen in the last year an increase of 27% of people sleeping rough on the streets on any given night. That's almost 4,000 people in England. Sadly, that's only the tip of the iceberg. We're also seeing close to 120,000 families who are homeless and living in temporary accommodation. That's record numbers of children, over 150,000 children who are homeless and living in temporary accommodation. That's only a small piece of the picture. But there are solutions. There is an answer to this problem.
What's the most obvious one?
For us, for people who are homeless or at risk of street homelessness, it's really important that people have access to suitable emergency accommodation and support. But that's only the first step. People need long-term, safe, secure, affordable and decent housing. And the only way that's going to be provided is by the government investing in a new generation of social homes. And we've been calling for at least 90,000 social homes a year for the next 10 years.
The new government have been talking a lot about building more houses in general. Are they talking enough about building more social houses, in your view?
Well, that's absolutely what we've been calling for. We've seen targets of 1.5 million homes, but, we've seen from, previous decades that just, building any homes anywhere is not enough to end the housing emergency. What we really need is building truly affordable. And when we say truly affordable, we mean social rent homes. That really is the only affordable tenure for many people.
You mentioned the number of 4,000 or so people sleeping homelessly across the UK on any given night. What portion of that is recently homeless people versus people who've been homeless for a long time? What extent is the last couple of years of cost of living crisis, rising rents, been the cause versus something that's been embedded for longer?
I mean, I'd say that, the statistic that the numbers have increased of over 27% in just 1 year. We've seen a 45% increase in the number of rough sleepers since August 2020, since the pandemic. And I think that really points to this issue of really high cost of living. We're seeing huge numbers of evictions. I think, everyone knows that rents are absolutely skyrocketing, and we just don't have enough affordable homes for people to, lay down roots and thrive and, build their lives around. And that's why it's really important that at this moment now, we make that decision to invest in a new generation of social homes. So we don't have to keep on coming back every year and say, you know, the statistics are rising. We've got record numbers of people, you know, sleeping on the streets or in temporary accommodation.
Does the government engage with you at Shelter very actively and encouragingly or not?
I think we've seen really, really positive movement. I think it's impossible to ignore the scale of the housing emergency. You know, the government's inherited record numbers of a country with record numbers of homeless people. And I think, you know, people are seeing that it's impacting absolutely every part of society, you know, children's education, health, people's mental health, the NHS, because, you know, poor conditions are leading to health problems as well. So they've been really open to the fact that, you know, not only to end homelessness, but also to look at growth and economy and, you know, creating strong communities. It's really important to invest in social homes. So we feel hopeful. There's a lot of work to be done, but it needs to be done now.
And finally, to what extent do you think the whole political debate is too often focused on mortgage rates and homeowners and not rents? And the huge portion of the country that do live in rented accommodation? Well, you know, the thing that's really shocking is that actually more people are closer to homelessness than they are to home ownership. And that's why it's really important that we do focus on providing, you know, decent, safe and affordable homes for people and preventing homelessness, you know, as well as a new generation of social homes. It's really important to look at the private rented sector, as you mentioned, in terms of driving homelessness, you know, Section 21 no-fault evictions, price rent hikes, you know, driving homelessness. And that's why we've been really pleased to see the government introduce a new piece of legislation, the Renters' Rights Bill, which hopefully will create more security and affordability in the private rented sector. Mhairi McRae, thanks so much for joining us. Very much appreciated. Director of Campaigns at Shelter. We'll have more from Jason Farrell's reporting on the topic in the next hour of the show. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be back with all of the day's top stories. Don't go anywhere here on Breakfast. Thanks very much.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Good Friday morning. It is 8 o'clock. Coming up on today's show, 22 people killed in the deadliest Israeli attack on central Beirut so far.
Plus, the Prime Minister prepares to chair the first meeting of the Council of Nations and Regions.
And this hour, we'll be speaking to former Haas F1 team principal and star of Netflix series Drive to Survive, Guenther Steiner.
It's Friday, the 11th of October. Your headlines. Sources tell Sky News the intended senior Hezbollah target has survived those strikes on the Lebanese capital. 14 people have died, but Florida officials say the worst-case scenario has been avoided in the aftermath of Hurricane Milton. I thought I'd be dead by now. Sky News reunites with a homeless man after 16 years sleeping rough. Kate pays tribute to victims of the Southport attack in her first public appearance with Prince William since her cancer diagnosis. The Northern Lights put on a dazzling display across the UK.
And in sport, England suffered a shock 2-1 defeat to Greece in the Nations League as Lee Carsley loses his first game as interim manager.
A very good morning to you. We start in the Middle East, where Israeli strikes in central Beirut have killed at least 22 people and wounded 117 others. It's the deadliest Israeli attack on the Lebanese capital since the start of the conflict. Sources have told Sky News that Hezbollah commander Wafik Safar, who was the intended target of the strikes, has survived. I spoke to our international correspondent Alex Rossi, who's in Beirut an hour ago.
I mean, it's a significant escalation. This happened in an area in central Beirut, an area that hasn't previously been targeted, a very densely populated residential part of the city. Now, at about 7:30 last night, we heard what could have been the screech of jets. It could have also been one of the missiles firing into the building. There were 2 airstrikes, 2 buildings targeted in all. And then over the horizon here, just across these buildings here, we saw a flash of lights, and then not long afterwards, plumes of thick black smoke going upwards. But people would have left, say, for instance, the southern suburbs of Dahir, which have been attacked almost on a daily basis by Israel since the ground incursion. And they would have headed to that area because they would have presumed it would have been safe, which is why we are seeing that the death toll is so very high. And they are warning, rescue services are warning, that number could continue to climb because the search and rescue is still continuing. More than 117 people have been injured. Again, that figure could rise as well. But a significant escalation by the Israelis. It's reported that they were targeting a senior Hezbollah leader, a man called Wafik Safar, who's a liaison and coordination leader for the group. He would have been involved in dealing, being an intermediary between Hezbollah and kind of the outside world. He's on the US sanctions list, but we have heard from Hezbollah sources that he survived the attack. But, you know, this was an airstrike in a very densely populated area of the capital here in Beirut.
Alice, just give me some context of where we are in the fighting, because clearly there was enormous fears of an immediate and pronounced escalation after the Iranian attempted missile attack on Israel. The fighting with Lebanon has kind of continued, with this being quite a, as you said, significant potential escalation. Why haven't we seen a response from Israel specifically to Iran yet? And is that still thought to be imminent?
The Israelis have always said, they've always maintained that the response, and they say they are threatening, it will come, but will be done at their own time. We've heard from the Defence Minister, Yoav Gallant, in the last few days saying it will be lethal, precise and deadly. So they are keeping up, I suppose, that campaign to a certain extent of psychological warfare on the Iranians, keeping them guessing. But there was a Security Cabinet meeting yesterday with the Israeli government, and now it's really up to Prime Minister Netanyahu to decide the time and place of those strikes. But certainly it will come, and the danger and fear here in the region is that it will be another escalation on that ladder of escalation and will lead to a response from the Iranians. Now, the Iranians have said that any Israeli attack on that country will lead them to attack back. And as you can see, it doesn't take much for that to spiral into a proper regional war. That's the big fear. Now, around the scenes of all this, there is a great deal of diplomacy going on within the region and outside to try and cool heads. Whether or not it has any effect on any of the actors in this, we wait to see. But certainly, Israel is saying that the retaliation will come.
Alex Rossi there for us. Meanwhile, in Gaza, at least 28 people were killed yesterday in an Israeli airstrike on a school sheltering displaced people. Israel said it had been targeting Hamas. Our Middle East correspondent, Alistair Bunkle, has this report.
The world's focus in recent weeks has been on Israel's invasion of Lebanon. But Israel's invasion of Gaza continues. Around lunchtime, an Israeli airstrike hit a medical clinic in Gaza City. Among the dead were 6 children.
We were just sitting in our rooms when it happened. The place is filled with children, women and children. That's it. You don't find adult men here. This is who Israel targets.
Another Israeli airstrike hit a school in Deir al-Balah in central Gaza. At least 26 people were reportedly killed this time. Some of the children had been on the street outside selling sweets.
It's always like this. These are innocent people. They just call them terror targets, but these are civilians. They're peaceful. They've been displaced multiple times. We've all been pushed out of our homes and come here to die, and they just keep on killing.
The wounded, and there were at least 70 according to health officials in Gaza, were rushed to hospital. Israel says both strikes targeted Hamas, but the Israeli military hasn't shown any evidence to back up that claim. The death toll in Gaza has now surpassed 42,000. More than 90% of the population is displaced, many of them multiple times over. Ceasefire talks broke down a long time ago. The war is now into its 2nd year, and the only certainty is that more people will be killed. Alistair Bunkle, Sky News, in Jerusalem.
News on the UK economy now, which grew 0.2% in August following a few months of stagnation. Let's bring in Paul Kelso, who has more detail and context for us on this morning's data print. Paul.
Yes, a return to growth, modest at 0.2% in August after that flatlined in the previous 2 months. It does confirm the overall trend this year of a slowdown in the second half of the year. We saw increases of 0.7 and 0.5% in the first 2 quarters. But that trajectory has turned. However, I think this will be welcome, the timing of this tick up in GDP as opposed to the scale of it to the government and the Chancellor in particular, because they are preparing this weekend to welcome hundreds of investors from around the world, people who control trillions of dollars in private and state-backed investment for an investment summit which the government is putting great store by. Why? Because if they are to deliver on their promise to deliver growth, largely by overhauling the UK's infrastructure. The UK's economy just simply isn't big enough to do it alone. We need overseas capital investment, and these leaders of American investment funds, sovereign wealth funds from the Middle East and Far East and around the world are crucial to delivering on that promise. So a little bit of growth to demonstrate that the torpid British economy has got a bit of life in it is welcome. It's also, of course, in the context of the budget that Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, is wrestling with at the moment. It's going to be delivered at the end of the month. If they permit gallows humour at the Treasury this time, they might already argue, if you look at these figures, that it's delivering a bit of growth, largely because of attempts to avoid its consequences. The Office for National Statistics, Wilf, this morning says that tax services and consultancy are up 4.3%.
Paul, as always, thanks so much. Now time for all of the day's other stories. Leah's got those for us.
Thank you very much, Wilfred. We're going to head to the US now. People across Florida are picking up the pieces after Hurricane Milton tore through coastal communities. Millions of people are still without power, and more than 1,000 people have been rescued, with emergency services making their way through floodwaters and debris. At least 14 people have been killed. Our US correspondent, James Matthews, reports from Siesta Key in Florida.
Siesta Key is where the Gulf of Mexico meets land. It's where Hurricane Milton met Florida. This was the result. A storm surge combined with strong winds that left streets flooded and littered with debris. Chainsaws and generators gave a soundtrack to the relief effort the morning after. It had been a difficult night in a deadly storm.
It was just bang, bang. You can hear it on the roof. You can hear it on the hitting the windows. So it was kind of like, my girlfriend was definitely a little scared.
I was in a safe place in my house, so.
All right. What was the safe place in your house?
Bunkered down by like the closets in the hallway.
But that way, our houses are okay, and we're all healthy. We're all still alive.
That's the main thing.
That's the main thing.
Daylight brought news of fatalities, but there was good news on Tampa Bay. Good morning. You made it. We'd spoken to Joseph Malinowski, who defied advice to evacuate and stayed on his boat. He made it through the night. Scary?
No, it wasn't scary. I just sat here and watched TikTok all night.
There were rescues by boat.
Let me spin around.
This one of a 14-year-old boy.
Grab him. What?
Sorry. And there were rescues at sea too. This was the captain of a fishing boat lifted 30 miles off the coast, clinging to an ice box. And there were near misses as trees were weakened by the wind.
I'm sad to see it happen, but look, I can't change it.
This wasn't Florida's first hurricane, and it wasn't Mike Mossey's. We joined him as he returned home after the storm through a flooded neighborhood. The worry was the basement. Mike had left $1 million worth of vehicle, a Lola T163 and a Maserati with 100 miles on the clock, both ruined.
They're totaled.
Really?
Yeah, totaled.
Why?
Corrosion, salt water, takes out everything. Yeah.
Dare I ask how you feel?
You know, it is what it is. I can't change it. You know, and I did all the prep we could ahead of time, and nobody ever thought the last two hurricanes would be like this, so, you know.
So you've lost your Maserati and your racing car?
Yeah. No Goodwood for me this year.
As bad as all of this is, it could have been much worse. That's acknowledged by the authorities, who'd billed Hurricane Milton as a historic storm. It was another dreadful hurricane experience here, but it was the long, difficult night when Florida got lucky. James Matthews, Sky News, in Siesta Key, Florida.
11 tourists and a tour guide have been rescued in Colorado after being trapped deep in a disused gold mine for 6 hours. Now, one person died when the lift broke about halfway down a mine shaft at the tourist site. Authorities had earlier rescued 11 people who were descending when it got stuck. Goodness me.
It's going to take a full investigation to know what really went wrong. Accidents happen when you're dealing with this type of machinery. But when we have more, we'll give you more on that. We did everything that we possibly could to make sure they were safe. And at the end of the day, those plans worked, and people got up safely.
Elsewhere, at least 20 people have been killed and 7 others injured in an attack on a mine in Pakistan. Now, a group of armed men opened fire in a small private coal mine in the southwestern province of Balochistan. Now, a hospital in the town of Duki says it's treating 6 injured people. The Balochistan Liberation Army, one of several insurgent groups battling the government, has now claimed responsibility for that attack. And finally, the Princess of Wales has made her first official public engagement since ending her chemotherapy treatment. Take a look at the pictures. She appeared alongside her husband on a visit to Southport, where they met the families of 3 children killed in a knife attack in July, as well as emergency responders who were first at the scene. The Princess of Wales spoke about how the families she met are coping after their loss.
They're okay, they're managing it differently. All the families are so different, and individually too, they're managing it and processing.
Great empathy there from the Princess of Wales, which is always great to see after her return to public engagements.
Yeah, no, it was fantastic to see her out and about, and obviously mainly with the empathy, as you're saying, but also looking well.
Yeah, she's looking a picture of health. That's great to hear. The other story that I wanted to bring viewers, Sky News has reunited with a man as he navigates life in a hostel and the merry-go-round of homelessness. His story in his 16 years on and off the streets is also the story of thousands of rough sleepers, and numbers are again rising. Here's our home editor, Jason Farrell, and his report.
Spare a little change, please. Spare a little change, please.
A year ago, on the streets, addicted to heroin and crack, a downward spiral left Ian hospitalised. That crisis got him on methadone and into a hostel. But this comes with its own challenges.
If you're picking someone up and you're going to put them in a hostel with 26 other people that are all addicts, it's hard to be stable in a place like this because it's a very unstable place to be in. I don't know where I left it.
In a sense, he's off the streets, but they've come in with him. Without help with self-care and organisation, he fears the only route is back.
I've been going round in this circle now for like 20 odd years, and it's like get into a hostel, become homeless.
Yeah.
Get into a hostel, become homeless.
So let's wind back 16 years of Ian's life, and through 6 prime ministers, sleeping rough in England is generally rising. It peaked pre-pandemic, but the numbers fall as we wind back all the way to the Blair-Brown era, where a rough sleeping unit successfully reduced it by 2/3. But back then, things weren't much different for Ian.
Can you please spare a little change, please? Please spare a little change, please. No.
This footage, filmed by our producer, who's known Ian since 2008, shows him aged 19. It's hard for 35-year-old Ian to watch.
What would your advice be to that young man?
Get help. Get help.
Yeah.
18 years later, and look where I am. I'm no better off, really. Like, I'm ready to, try to get some sort of routine in life.
Blair's administration provided additional support for the issues that caused rough sleeping, and this Labour government is promising to replicate that. For Ian, no one's tackled the root causes, his mental health.
To get the therapy, you need to be completely clean off drugs and alcohol for a couple of years. But that's part of the illness.
Addiction and rough sleeping has been a way of life.
I want to be so far gone that so my problems have gone away, just for tonight.
To break the cycle, Ian says he needs the kind of help that has always eluded him. Jason Farrell, Sky News.
Almost 2/3 of people in England and Wales want assisted dying to become legal for terminally ill adults, according to polling. Next week, a bill on end-of-life care is set to come before Parliament for the first time in almost a decade. Daniel Henry's here to tell us more about the poll and the bill. And Daniel, we're not yet at a place, despite either of the government suggesting they're going to actually introduce a bill to legalise assisted dying?
Not yet. The bill you're talking about comes before the House next week. It's something that has been pushed by lots of campaigners, including Dame Esther Rantzen, who, in effect, got the Labour government, as it ended up being, to commit to having this vote before the general election had even been held. But this poll by King's College London points to 2/3 of people that they polled saying that they back assisted dying and want it to become part of the statute book before the end of the Parliament. They want this to happen within the next 5 years. So this poll is suggesting that there's a majority of public opinion which is saying that this is a priority for them. This poll also pointed to say that 20% of people disagreed with that, 17% of people had no opinion whatsoever on it. But as I say, it is a snapshot of public opinion, and it gives an indication of kind of where things are moving. Scotland, Jersey and the Isle of Man are also considering changes around this. I think it's also important to remind people that assisted dying currently, as it stands, is illegal. And helping people do that is illegal. Carries a 14-year prison term as it stands. But if things change, if it gets through the House over there, that things could be very different.
It could, but is it fair to say this is the direction where things are moving? I think it's a hell of a long way off if you look at the rhetoric of all sides of the political aisle on this. And of course, it's still something that's very rare around all of Europe. It's not like it's become commonplace.
No, that's right. And on the other side of the argument, people like Baroness Tanni Gray-Thompson, Paralympic legend, she has been very vocal about her concerns about the idea behind this bill, talking about the possibility of vulnerable people falling under pressure of going through with assisted dying and putting doctors in a position that is very difficult for them. If you remember, doctors come into the profession with a do no harm oath that they, the Hippocratic oath that they come out with. So there are still lots and lots of questions about what's going to happen here, but this poll, as I say, is a snapshot. It's where the public appear to be at this point in time. We don't know what's going to happen where, whatever the bill comes out with in the House of Parliament, if the public will change their mind.
Daniel, great stuff. Thanks so much. Let's have a quick look at the weather as things stand this Friday morning. Well, there'll be a north-south split in the weather over the next few days, with temperatures below average for all. It's a cold start with an extensive grass frost and local air frost this morning. Gosh, multiple types of frost. Most places will have a dry and sunny morning, but Scotland will be cloudier and breezier with outbreaks of rain. There'll also be a few showers around, mainly for northwest Ireland and northwest England, and they'll be on the cold side again today. That's your weather. As you can see, Rob Powell has joined me around the desk. What's the headline on the agenda for the government today? It's this meeting in Edinburgh for the Council of the Regions and the Nations. What exactly is that?
Yeah, the Council of Nations and Regions, something that was, pardon me, promised in the Labour manifesto, dreamed up initially actually by former Prime Minister Gordon Brown, did that big piece of work about the Constitution, which sort of headline measure was get rid of the House of Lords, but another part of it was...
we don't have your mic, I'm being told, Rob, so we're just going to get the mic put on Rob very quickly. But we're in a two-shot, so we can't. Go on, doesn't matter. Come on and put the mic on. I don't know how I'm going to fill however long we've got to fill, though, otherwise. But, of course, we did talk to Pat McFadden a little bit about that and also about the GDP growth that came in earlier today. Let's have a little listen to what Pat McFadden had to say earlier.
Sue's been through quite a lot in the last few weeks. I worked with her. She's a great colleague. She's taken a short break now, and I think we should allow her the time and privacy to do that.
Drum roll. It's better be good now, Rob.
I should just keep it on the whole time, shouldn't I? I don't know why I bother taking it off. Never mind.
Anyway, so headlines of what's on the agenda today.
Yeah, this is the Council of Nations and Regions, something that was in the manifesto, dreamt up by Gordon Brown. I think he wanted it to have a bit more of a sort of legal underpinning. As you heard from Pat McFadden there, you might expect former Number 10 Chief of Staff Sue Gray to be there, given that her new job title working under Mr McFadden is the Envoy for the Nations and Regions. He says she won't be. She's having a break because she's been through a lot. Look, I think the point of this is, as I said, I don't think it's not got a statutory footing like Gordon Brown thought it should, but it is more of a sort of avenue for the First Ministers, the mayors from the various English regions to come together and discuss shared priorities and to work on shared projects.
Well, let's discuss now what this new Council of Regions and Nations is viewed like by the Deputy First Minister of Scotland, Kate Forbes, who is now able to join us. A very good morning to you, Deputy First Minister.
Good morning.
Would you welcome this new council? Is it significant enough? Does it mean enough to you or not?
Well, we are in good faith engaging with it. We said back in July that we wanted to reset the relationship between the UK government and the Scottish government. And so we're engaging fully and constructively in today's event. Quite obviously, the value of any engagement is only as good as the results it produces. And we've been quite clear about the items on our agenda, which is to see a different approach taken by the Chancellor in the upcoming budget, and also to see things like the Acorn project, Scotland's carbon capture and storage facility in Scotland, being funded.
What would you like to see from Rachel Reeves at the budget?
Well, I think people voted for change in July. They didn't vote for more of the same. They didn't vote for more austerity. They didn't vote for more challenges in our public services. So we would like to see her take a very different approach to the budget. It's all very well saying that things are really tough and things are difficult. But to be perfectly honest, we were saying during the election that Labour weren't being straight with the public about the challenges in our public finances. And I think that right now she has an opportunity to help us get out of these difficulties by injecting more funding into our public services, particularly into our NHS, which is seeing higher demand and yet spending power eroded by inflation over the last few years.
So more taxes as well, then, to fund that if necessary?
Well, she has choices. So in Scotland, we have taken difficult choices on taxation. There's an additional £1.5 billion because of the difficult decisions we've taken on tax. So it's not easy, but it is an option. But the other thing is to look at her fiscal rules. She abides within certain fiscal rules. They were set by the Conservatives. And our option would be to reconsider those and to see if there's a way of prioritising the right kind of spend, which will really accelerate growth in this country. But more than that, we'll be able to meet the rising demand that we're seeing across our public services.
Is there a balance in your mind of how successful you'd like the new council, the new engagement with the Westminster government to be? Because I guess the more successful it is, the less likely full independence is for Scotland?
Well, that's never been proved true in the past. So we know that from polling figures, there's still very robust, resilient support for independence. And that has outlasted Conservative governments. It's outlasted the Labour government. At the end of the day, people in Scotland believe that Scotland's future is best decided by those who live in Scotland. So at the end of the day, today's event is about the immediate opportunities to improve lives in Scotland, to deliver change. That's the premise on which we are willing to engage constructively with the UK government. If they are willing to partner with us on tackling child poverty, on building resilient public services, on establishing economic prosperity, then they have a willing partner with us. Don't get me wrong, a lot of this engagement happens outside staged events like today, which have their place. But at the end of the day, that work is ongoing on a daily basis through engagement that I would have quite regularly with the Secretaries of State in different departments, all with an aim of improving lives and delivering the change that I think people voted for.
So you said staged event. So is this whole thing today a gimmick from Keir Starmer?
I mean, we're not characterising it as that. We're characterising it as an election pledge that they made. I suppose it remains to be seen whether it will deliver change. So I note that people have asked, journalists have asked the Labour government, will they be in listening mode? And that's the big question. Will they be in listening mode? Will they be willing to take on board points that we put to them? I'll give you an example. Last week, £22 billion was announced for 2 carbon capture storage projects in England. Now, we've had a carbon capture and storage project since 2015 that's sort of been snubbed 3 times by successive UK governments. And we're very hopeful that it receives the funding it requires, because it's so critical to reaching our net zero targets, not just in Scotland, but across the UK. That's an issue that I know the First Minister intends to raise with the Prime Minister. And so perhaps after today, I could come back to you as to whether he's listened and whether he's willing to deliver, because that will be the real test of whether today delivers change or is just a set-piece event.
Please do come back. We look forward to the review of this weekend's gatherings and today. Kate Forbes, thank you. So to come here on The Breakfast Show, Israeli strikes targeting a senior Hezbollah figure killed 22 in Beirut. Plus, former US President Barack Obama hits the campaign trail and appeals to voters to reject Donald Trump in next month's election. Plus, we'll speak to Formula One fan favourite and former principal of the Haas F1 team, Guenther Steiner. Welcome back to The Breakfast Show. Well, coming up, Israel says its retaliation for Iran's missile attack will be lethal, precise and surprising. In a moment, we'll speak to a security expert about that. But first, a reminder of all the day's top stories. Liz got those for us.
Oh, thank you so much, Wilfred. Israeli strikes in central Beirut have killed at least 22 people and wounded 117 others. Sources have told Sky News that Hezbollah commander Rafik Safar, who was the intended target of the strikes, has survived. Elsewhere, rescue efforts are underway in Florida. This is following the devastating damage from Hurricane Milton. 14 people are now confirmed to have died after Category 3 storm brought 120-mile-per-hour winds and 18 inches of rain to parts of the US state. The UK economy grew by 0.2% in August, in line with expectation. It's a welcome boost for the government after 2 months of no growth and ahead of that budget in 3 weeks' time. And Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer is set to meet heads of devolved governments and metro mayors in Edinburgh today. This is the first meeting of the Council of Nations and Regions.
Yeah, thank you. Now, returning to the Middle East, and Lebanon's health ministry says at least 22 people have been killed in Beirut in what appears to be one of the deadliest attacks by Israel on the region. Sources confirmed to Sky News that senior Hezbollah commander Wafiq Safar, who was the intended target of the strikes, has survived. Robert Clark is a defence fellow at the Yorktown Institute and joins us now. Robert, great to see you. Good morning to you. What's your take on this latest attack by Israel on Lebanon?
Oh, good morning. Well, I think this latest attack to try and target Wafiq Safar, who is Hezbollah's almost their political and military liaison with the Lebanese security forces, it demonstrates the widening, if you like, of Israel's targeting and decapitation campaign of senior Hezbollah commanders. And we can see that now being exported across Hezbollah's political leadership as well, not just its military. And traditionally, over the last few weeks, this has seen enormous success with dozens of quite senior Hezbollah military commanders being eliminated. And now we can see that being taken to the political scene of Hezbollah as well. So really trying to decapitate Hezbollah from within, both militarily and politically.
Let's talk about Israel's potential response to Iran directly. Why do you think it hasn't taken place yet?
I think for a number of reasons. I mean, first of all, we know there will be a response. It's been 11 days now since Iran's unprovoked launch of around 180 ballistic missiles into Israel. And I think really we can see the efforts of the Biden administration diplomatically trying to control and restrain Israel to such an extent that the more extreme, if you like, so-called extreme options, including attacking nuclear facilities, have been off the table for Israel now. I think another reason as well is Israel wants to do this at a time of its own choosing. There's wide speculation that the now infamous pager and walkie-talkie attacks was not to Israel's timing. So I think Israel are going to plan this incredibly well. We can see that with its current operations. Really the time frame for this will be in Israel's choosing. And the longer it maintains that as well, the element of surprise, it retains control of the situation.
There's a lot of talk about Iran's nuclear weapons facilities. How easy is it to attack one of those?
They're not easy at all. Israel have the means, the delivery means with which to certainly destroy a fair amount of these targets, but they're scattered over enormous amounts of Iranian territory. Iran is an incredibly large country. Its air defenses aren't fantastic, but the ability to penetrate meters of concrete and earth to target these facilities is incredibly difficult. And really, Israel would need a lot of American help and support with the targeting of this. And we can see, like I say, just how restraint America are. Their risk propensity in the Biden administration for anything on Iran's nuclear facility is well known to be incredibly low, the threshold for risk. And we know as well that President Biden is doing everything he can to try and ensure some form of peace will survive his presidency.
Is some of that restraint legitimate? Would there be a lot of collateral damage of trying to hit a nuclear site?
It depends which sites. I mean, quite often some of the sites, particularly the ones in Qum, are quite heavily dispersed around major population centres, particularly purely so they can try and target and inflict civilian casualties from the Iranian side. So there are some facilities which the collateral damage will be a lot lower, but the Iranian regime aren't stupid. They know that these are prized targets by Israel and by America in the eventuality of a war with the US. So yes, they try and do as much as they can to try and put them around civilian areas, but not all of them. They are scattered over an enormous area.
Robert Clark, thanks so much.
Pleasure.
Now, former US President Barack Obama has been out on the campaign trail targeting voters in the key swing state of Pennsylvania. He appealed to people to reject the Republican candidate, former President Donald Trump, saying a potential return to the White House wouldn't be good for the country.
Pennsylvania, we do not need 4 more years of that.
We don't need 4 more years of arrogance and bumbling and bluster and division. America's ready to turn the page. We are ready for a better story, one that helps us work together instead of turning against each other. Pennsylvania, we're ready for a President Kamala Harris.
From one of the great orators of our time to another one. James?
We are compared quite a lot, actually, to each other.
For the sport, of course, now we talked about the depressing story of the football last hour, but the cricket, we should have really started with that. Extraordinary yesterday from Harry Brook in particular, but also from the bowlers today on England's side, because both teams in the first innings got massive scores. So what changed for us to be so successful in the bowling in the second innings?
Sensational. Sensational match. We definitely should have focused on the cricket and ignored the football. We should just not talk about the football and what happened last night at Wembley. It was pretty horrific. But, yeah, look, the cricket, records galore yesterday. I mean, 823 for 7, fourth highest first innings total in Test match history. Harry Brook, 317. In almost a run of ball as well, so the speed he got his runs was
sort of putting shade on Joe Root's records as well.
Root who?
Exactly.
Only England's all-time Test run scorer. It really was a remarkable innings from both of them, remarkable from England. Like I said, records galore. But Pakistan in their second innings have been notoriously recently struggling a lot. So I think it's over the last 15 matches, they're actually at the bottom of the Test rankings in regards to their average second innings. So England knew if they put them under pressure, there could be an opportunity for a result. And the speed at which England get their runs, so 823, they got 267 more runs than Pakistan did in the first innings, but it took England just 1 over more than Pakistan.
Wow.
And that makes such a difference. So we'll get to some of that to get to England's cricket victory in the sport. Plus, we'll hear from England football manager Lee Carsley on a disappointing night at Wembley.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality. Getting more people more active. Live life with Vitality.
When I joined Wigan, I needed time. You know, the first thing they asked me is to change the style of play. But I need time to change the style of play. I need time to recruit players who could play the style of play. I need time to do coaching session to improve the players. People expect you to come and then change everything like that. It doesn't work like that. When you want to play the style of play that everyone wants to play, you know, beautiful football, you need the players who can do that. As coaches or managers, we need to keep pushing. Whenever we have opportunity to do well, we have to do well, of course. But before you do well, you need the opportunity, of course.
Being the first black African to manage a professional English club, how proud are you of that? How do you reflect on that now?
Very proud. Very, very proud. Of course, I knew that it was going to be a huge challenge. But in my life, you know, I had a lot of setbacks, I had a lot of tough moments, tough time. But I think what is very important for me is my resilience. You know, during my career, I had some tough time, you know, but never give up. I kept pushing, you know, and that's what I'm going to do, you know, and thinking that I was the first black African is huge, but I haven't finished the job. And I'm hungrier to go back. There's no many black managers who have the opportunity and had the time to work. You know, we had Patrick Vieira, who done a really good job at Crystal Palace when he joined and then, you know, get sacked after. We hope that, you know, we can be treated the same. I think it's important to look where you go. But as you know, there's no many opportunities out there.
Do you really want to crack it in England, or would you be happy to manage elsewhere, abroad or internationally?
I would prefer to work in England because that's where I did all my career as a football player. I know the environment, I know the culture, I know the people a little bit more than other countries. If there's an opportunity maybe abroad, I'm thinking more about it, definitely. Being an ex-player doesn't mean that you're going to be a manager, and you have to prove, and I'm willing to prove. I just need some opportunities.
Who do you take advice from? Who do you ask for help? Who do you still learn from? As you know, when we're talking about coaching at the moment, who are some of your kind of mentors and heroes?
Of course, Arsene Wenger. Still talking to Mr. Wenger. Speak to Brendan Rodgers, of course.
What advice have they given you that in the last year or so?
Yeah, just keep try to keep fit. You know, keep your mind busy. Do a lot of gym, sport. You look after your health really first, and then keep applying for jobs. You know, and that's the advice that they give me. You know, looking after yourself, your faith, and then keep applying for jobs. When I have a task to do, or when I work for somebody, I work, you know, all my strength, all my power, I work everything to just make sure that I can please my chairman and the guy who employed me. Because when somebody employ you, that person give you the responsibility to look after.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality.
Broadly on the topic of sport when we come back from this short break, because we'll be joined by the former principal of the F1 team Haas, Guenther Steiner, to talk obviously F1, but more broadly his new autobiography.
Weeknights on Sky News.
This is your chance. Tell people. Welcome to the Politics Hub.
Our police force has apologised. If you want to find out about Grimsby, you come to the docks.
I'm live in Jerusalem.
Are you not concerned that that could lead to all-out war?
Hello there, good evening. There are fears of an upsurge in violence. What's at stake here?
You are watching the press preview, a first look at the front pages as they arrive.
I'm David Blevins, and I'm Sky's senior Ireland correspondent.
It takes 60 minutes to cross the Irish Sea. It took the British monarchy a century.
I've spent 30 years reporting the journey from conflict to peace.
The political parties of Northern Ireland have reached agreement.
If there's anyone who might know how to fix Northern Ireland's devolved government, it's the American architect.
Changes in circumstance require changes in approach.
The end of the political stalemate, the start of a new chapter for Northern Ireland.
I confirm that I am willing to take up the office of First Minister. My election to the post of First Minister demonstrates the change that's happening on this island.
Catholics and Protestants on different sides, now facing the same threat.
If we both contract COVID-19 and end up in hospital, religion's nothing.
People here are adept at finding hope amid adversity. That's the spirit of a place that punches way above its weight.
We help you understand the world with us. A toxic blue-green algae now poisoning Loch Ness. It's breaking your heart what has happened here.
It is.
This is a vital resource, a national treasure, now fighting for its very life. They are effectively surrounded by Northern Ireland, and that makes this the most unlikely of international frontiers.
If there's a hard border, I think it'll cripple the country.
Winter is coming. Welcome to Winterfell. It's an iconic location in this globally acclaimed drama. Ophelia was the most powerful hurricane this far east in the Atlantic on record.
Sky News, the full story first.
Day of this conflict.
They keep telling us that they want aid.
And this is what's left of it.
Why only in America?
People want their country to work.
Just want a job in a normal life.
Why are these homes empty?
I want you to be honest with people.
That has happened within minutes.
Sky News, the full story first. Free wherever you get your news.
Welcome back. Guenther Steiner has been a familiar face on the Formula One grid for years, but recently shot to superstardom when he became a fan favourite in the behind-the-scenes F1 series Drive to Survive on Netflix. Since departing his role as the team principal for Haas, he's been pretty busy, and he joins us now to discuss his life and career. Guenther, it's a real pleasure to have you with us, and forgive me, we're all big fans of Drive to Survive, so forgive me for just doing this, but a reminder that on Sky News you can't be quite as liberal with your language as you are so endearingly and amusingly on Drive to Survive.
I would never do that to you, on live TV. So good morning to everyone, and thanks for having me.
Well, that's good to hear. My bosses will be delighted, even if secretly we're a little bit sad about that. Tell us what it was like when I guess it was the documentary more than the job itself that you were doing that really kind of changed how people reacted to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I'm in motorsport since almost 40 years now, and Drive to Survive, I think, changed a lot of things for a lot of people, and one of them is me. But even not, when this thing started, actually, I don't think anybody could envisage what it's going to do for Formula One and what it did for me personally. So I think all in all, it's very good that Formula One got a lot more exposure and a lot more people watch it now.
And Guenther, look, we got a glimpse in the show of life as a F1 principal, but from the outside, I think a lot of F1 fans see the glitz and glamour associated with Formula One. But what is the reality of being a team principal of an F1 team for such a long period of time?
You're working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and the whole year long. So no, it's pretty
nice and
tough.
easy.
Yeah, exactly, nice and easy. You lay back and you drink champagne and eat caviar. That is what they're saying. But no, everybody who works in, and I'm not saying the team principal is the hardest working one, but you just need to be always present. You need to have your mind on it. You need to be focused. But it is a tough job. But on the other side, it's a very nice thing to do, to run an F1 team. There is only 10 F1 teams in the world. But it comes at a price.
Guenther, I just want to zoom out for a moment. You've always shown such charisma, such confidence throughout your career, but just a word on finding that confidence. I've got a 6-year-old, Enzo, watching, who's mad into F1, but how do you find what you're good at and flourish so beautifully as you did?
I think it comes with experience. I'm doing this motorsport since 40 years, and at a certain point, you know your way around it, and you work hard. And what I always do, I try always to do my best. And sometimes, obviously, it is not good enough, but at least I can never blame myself for saying I didn't try. So, and that, I think, gives you confidence what to do, and and you just move on. So I always enjoyed doing racing cars, and that is what I know how to do. And after a while, it just gets to you, and you know what you're doing. Be confident, but not arrogant.
Guenther, I'm interested in your view on this as one of the team principals. I love the fact that Formula One isn't just down purely to the drivers, and it is also the full teams behind them, and the mechanics, and the importance of having great innovation. It's a wonderful aspect to it. But if you snapshot where we are today, do the teams and the quality of the car have too much influence on the results? Should there be a bit more equality so that it pushes it back on the drivers again?
No, it's always difficult to say, because, as you said, it is a team sport, and if the team does a good job, then you go forward. And I say the team is also the commercial departments. If they're doing a good job, they get more money, and you develop your car. So pushing it back only on the drivers, I think then it gets everybody's the same. Then it's not Formula One anymore. Formula One, without having this, that the teams are dominating as a team. And I always say the driver is just not diminishing it. It's just part of the team. So he needs to do his bit, but the team is as important. Therefore, I think Formula One is so interesting for so many people, because it's big. There's hundreds of people working in a team, and they all need to work together to have a result. And I think with the budget cap, which came in a few years ago, the playing field is leveled out. quite a bit now. As you can see, this year there were 7 different winners, so I think this makes it very interesting.
Yeah, Guenther, I was going to get you on, moving on to this year's championship. And, if we look back over the last couple, it's been very dominant for Red Bull, and in particular Max Verstappen. Now we seem to have a potential real title race going on. Now, Lando Norris is quite far behind still, but he's edging closer to Max Verstappen, isn't he? What are the chances that you'd give Lando Norris that he could end up pipping Max Verstappen come the end of the season?
I give him good chances. I think in the moment it's a 60-40 for Lando. That is because he's doing so good. When you saw the last race in Singapore, he was very strong. Obviously, Max finished second. I think Max now plays the clever game, trying to get as much points as possible behind Lando, because beating him in the moment is very difficult for him. And if Lando is a little bit fortunate, and maybe Ferrari helps him a little bit in the way that Ferrari takes points away from Max Verstappen, then I think he will be winning the championship. And therefore, I think it's a 60-40, because in the moment, Ferrari is for sure the second strongest team. In Singapore, they couldn't show it because their qualifying didn't go to their as they were planned. But I think Lando, for me, is the favourite.
Wow.
There we go. Guenther, just before you go, I just wondered, do you think there's room for you for another role somewhere in F1?
I don't know about that, but in the moment, I'm pretty happy where I am. And I say, if there's something interesting coming up, I for sure do it just to take a job, to be there. I don't want to do that anymore. I'm not getting any younger. And, as we said in the beginning, it's a tough job, and I'm not afraid for working, but I need to have a good view of what is going to be that I say yes to before making a commitment.
Guenther Steiner, it was a pleasure to have you with us this morning. Good luck with the new book, and thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely love that. And interesting here how positive he's on Ferrari, which is good for Lewis next year.
It's really competitive. F1 is really competitive this year. It's fair to say the last couple of seasons haven't been, but this year it's really coming back. It's exciting once again for the fans.
It is. We're out of time. This hour Sky News Breakfast will be back in just a couple of minutes with all the day's top stories.
I say, bring it on.
With America divided and tensions running high, get ready for an election like no other.
Join our teams as we follow the campaign trail as America decides.
We will win, win, win.
Get closer to the action this US election with full reaction and analysis.
Sky News, the full story first.
Good morning, it's 9 o'clock on today's show. 22 people killed in the deadliest Israeli attack on central Beirut so far.
Plus, the Prime Minister prepares to chair the first meeting of the Council of Nations and Regions.
And England beat Pakistan by an innings and 47 runs in a memorable Test victory.
It's Friday, the 11th of October. Your headlines. Sources tell Sky News the intended senior Hezbollah target has survived the strikes on the Lebanese capital. 14 people have died, but Florida officials say the worst-case scenario has been avoided in the aftermath of Hurricane Milton. I thought I'd be dead by now. Sky News reunites with a homeless man after 16 years sleeping rough. Kate pays tribute to victims of the Southport attack in her first public appearance with Prince William since her cancer diagnosis. And the Northern Lights put on a dazzling display across the UK.
And in sport, England suffered a shock 2-1 defeat to Greece in the Nations League as Lee Carsley loses his first game as interim manager.
Good Friday morning to you. We start in the Middle East, where Israeli strikes in central Beirut have killed at least 22 people and wounded 117 others. It's the deadliest Israeli attack on the Lebanese capital since the start of the conflict. Sources have told Sky News that Hezbollah commander Wafik Safar, who was the intended target of the strikes, has survived. Our international correspondent Alex Rossi has more for us from Beirut.
I mean, it's a significant escalation. This happened in an area in central Beirut, an area that hasn't previously been targeted, a very densely populated residential part of the city. Now, at about 7:30 last night, we heard what could have been the screech of jets. It could have also been one of the missiles firing into the building. There were 2 airstrikes, 2 buildings targeted in all. And then over the horizon here, just across these buildings here, we saw a flash of lights, and then not long afterwards, plumes of thick black smoke going upwards. But people would have left, say, for instance, the southern suburbs of Dahir, which have been attacked almost on a daily basis by Israel since the ground incursion, and they would have headed to that area because they would have presumed it would have been safe, which is why we are seeing that the death toll is so very high. And they are warning, rescue services are warning, that number could continue to climb because the search and rescue is still continuing. More than 117 people have been injured. Again, that figure could rise as well, but a significant escalation by the Israelis. It's reported that they were targeting a senior Hezbollah leader, a man called Wafik Safar, who's a liaison and coordination leader for the group. He would have been involved in dealing, being an intermediary between Hezbollah and kind of the outside world. He's on the US sanctions list, but we have heard from Hezbollah sources that he survived the attack. But, you know, this was an airstrike in a very densely populated area of the capital here in Beirut.
Meanwhile, in Gaza, at least 28 people were killed yesterday in an Israeli strike on a school sheltering displaced people. Israel said it had been targeting Hamas. Our Middle East correspondent Alistair Bunkle reports.
The world's focus in recent weeks has been on Israel's invasion of Lebanon. But Israel's invasion of Gaza continues. Around lunchtime, an Israeli airstrike hit a medical clinic in Gaza City. Among the dead were 6 children.
We were just sitting in our rooms when it happened. The place is filled with children, women and children. That's it. You don't find adult men here. This is who Israel targets.
Another Israeli airstrike hit a school in Deir al-Balah in central Gaza. At least 26 people were reportedly killed this time. Some of the children had been on the street outside selling sweets.
It's always like this. These are innocent people. They just call them terror targets, but these are civilians. They're peaceful. They've been displaced multiple times. We've all been pushed out of our homes and come here to die, and they just keep on killing.
The wounded, and there were at least 70 according to health officials in Gaza, were rushed to hospital. Israel says both strikes targeted Hamas. But the Israeli military hasn't shown any evidence to back up that claim. The death toll in Gaza has now surpassed 42,000. More than 90% of the population is displaced, many of them multiple times over. Ceasefire talks broke down a long time ago. The war is now into its second year, and the only certainty is that more people will be killed. Alistair Bunkle, Sky News, in Jerusalem.
Now, news on the UK economy, which grew at 0.2% in August following a few months of stagnation. Our business correspondent Paul Kelso joins us with more on this. Paul, not bad, not great. How would we frame this?
Welcome, probably largely because of its timing as opposed to the scale. It doesn't change the broader picture of growth this year. First half good, second half not so good. It appears to be the trajectory we're on. We had growth of 0.7%, 0.5% in the first two quarters of the year. Thus far, the third quarter, flat and flat in June and July. No growth at all, 0.2% in August. Pretty broad-based. Construction, services and manufacturing all contributing to a bit of upward growth. We don't expect to keep up broadly with the growth in the first half of the year, but the timing is helpful to the government and the Chancellor as she works on her first budget, particularly not least because this weekend they will begin welcoming to the UK hundreds of investors invited to an investment summit. People that'll be held on Monday, people who control trillions of dollars of capital that the UK wants and needs to encourage to be invested if this government is going to deliver on its promise to deliver growth largely by overhauling infrastructure, the green transition and the like. Rachel Reeves mentions as much in her reaction to the GDP news this morning. She says it's welcome news the economy has returned to growth. It's the number one priority of this government so we can fix the NHS and rebuild Britain. She mentions the summit at which people who represent big private investment funds from the US and beyond, as well as sovereign wealth funds, will be in the City of London. There'll be a sprinkling of royalty, one imagines, to help them believe, and this growth figure may help them believe that the UK is a safe and wise place to put their money.
Paul, as always, thanks so much. Paul Kelso there for us. Time now for all of the day's other top stories. Leah's got those for us.
Thanks so much, Wilfred. Rescue efforts are underway in Florida after Hurricane Milton brought 120-mile-per-hour winds and up to 18 inches of rain to some areas. At least 14 people are confirmed to have died, and millions are still without power. Our US correspondent, James Matthews, reports from Siesta Key in Florida.
Siesta Key is where the Gulf of Mexico meets land. It's where Hurricane Milton met Florida. This was the result. A storm surge combined with strong winds that left streets flooded and littered with debris. Chainsaws and generators gave a soundtrack to the relief effort the morning after. It had been a difficult night in a deadly storm.
It was just bang, bang. You can hear it on the roof. You can hear it on the hitting the windows. So it was kind of like my girlfriend was definitely a little scared.
I was in a safe place in my house, so.
All right. What was the safe place in your house?
Bunkered down by like the closets in the hallway.
But that way, our houses are okay, and we're all healthy. We're all still alive.
That's the main thing.
That's the main thing.
Daylight brought news of fatalities, but there was good news on Tampa Bay. Good morning. You made it. We'd spoken to Joseph Malinowski, who defied advice to evacuate and stayed on his boat. He made it through the night. Scary?
No. It wasn't scary. I just sat here and watched TikTok all night.
There were rescues by boat.
Let me spin around.
This one of a 14-year-old boy.
Grab him. What?
Sorry. And there were rescues at sea too. This was the captain of a fishing boat lifted 30 miles off the coast, clinging to an ice box. And there were near misses as trees were weakened by the wind.
I'm sad to see it happen, but look, I can't change it.
This wasn't Florida's first hurricane, and it wasn't Mike Moss's. We joined him as he returned home after the storm through a flooded neighbourhood. The worry was the basement. Mike had left $1 million worth of vehicle, a Lola T163 and a Maserati with 100 miles on the clock, both ruined.
They're totaled.
Really?
Yeah, totaled.
Why?
Corrosion, salt water, takes out everything. Yeah.
Dare I ask how you feel?
You know, it is what it is. I can't change it. You know, and I did all the prep we could ahead of time, and nobody ever thought the last 2 hurricanes would be like this. So, you know.
So you've lost your Maserati and your racing car?
Yeah. No Goodwood for me this year.
As bad as all of this is, it could have been much worse. That's acknowledged by the authorities, who'd billed Hurricane Milton as a historic storm. It was another dreadful hurricane experience here, but it was the long, difficult night when Florida got lucky. James Matthews, Sky News, in Siesta Key, Florida.
11 tourists and a tour guide have been rescued in Colorado after being trapped deep inside a disused gold mine for 6 hours. One person died when the lift broke about halfway down a mine shaft at the tourist site. Authorities had earlier rescued 11 people who were descending when it got stuck.
It's going to take a full investigation to know what really went wrong. Accidents happen when you're dealing with this type of machinery. But when we have more, we'll give you more on that. We did everything that we possibly could to make sure they were safe. And at the end of the day, those plans worked, and people got up safely.
At least 20 people have been killed and 7 others injured in an attack on a mine in Pakistan. Now, a group of armed men, they opened fire in a small private coal mine. This is in the southwestern province of Balochistan. Now, a hospital in the town of Duki says it's treating 6 injured people. The Balochistan Liberation Army, one of several insurgent groups battling the government, has claimed responsibility for the attack. And the Princess of Wales has made her first official public engagement since ending her chemotherapy treatment. Kate appeared alongside her husband, Prince William, during a visit to Southport, where they met the families of the 3 children killed in the knife attack in July, as well as emergency responders who were first on the scene. The Princess of Wales spoke about how the families she met are coping after their loss.
They're okay, but you're managing it differently. All the families are so different, and individually too, they're managing it and processing.
Lovely to see her looking so well.
So fantastic, and she really did look very, very healthy indeed, which was great. And switching to a topic which is close to both of their hearts as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, it's the new Labour government. It's promising to set up a task force to tackle homelessness and rough sleeping, and it's led by Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner. But with rough sleeping up over 40% in 2 years, well, it's no easy task. Sky's home editor, Jason Farrell, meets a man who's been off and on the streets since the last Labour government, who explains why he feels he's stuck in a cycle he can't escape.
Spare a little change, please. Spare a little change, please.
A year ago, on the streets, addicted to heroin and crack, a downward spiral left Ian hospitalised. That crisis got him on methadone and into a hostel. But this comes with its own challenges.
If you're picking someone up and you're going to put them in a hostel with 26 other people that are all addicts, it's hard to be stable in a place like this because it's a very unstable place to be in. I don't know where I left it.
In a sense, he's off the streets, but they've come in with him. Without help with self-care and organisation, he fears the only route is back.
I've been going round in this circle now for like 20-odd years, and it's like get into a hostel, become homeless.
Yeah.
Get into a hostel, become homeless.
So let's wind back 16 years of Ian's life, and through 6 prime ministers, sleeping rough in England is generally rising. It peaked pre-pandemic, but the numbers fall as we wind back all the way to the Blair-Brown era, where a rough sleeping unit successfully reduced it by 2/3. But back then, things weren't much different for Ian.
Can you please spare a little change, please? Please spare a little change, please.
No.
This footage, filmed by our producer who's known Ian since 2008, shows him aged 19. It's hard for 35-year-old Ian to watch.
What would your advice be to that young man?
Get help. Get help.
Yeah.
18 years later, and look where I am. I'm no better off, really. Like, I'm ready to, try to get some sort of routine in life.
Blair's administration provided additional support for the issues that caused rough sleeping, and this Labour government is promising to replicate that. For Ian, no one's tackled the root causes, his mental health.
To get the therapy, you need to be completely clean off drugs and alcohol for a couple of years. But that's part of the illness.
Addiction and rough sleeping has been a way of life.
I want to be so far gone that so my problems have gone away just for tonight.
To break the cycle, Ian says he needs the kind of help that has always eluded him. Jason Farrell, Sky News.
Now, the Prime Minister is in Scotland today to meet with the heads of the UK's devolved governments in the first meeting of the Council of Nations and Regions. The economy and spending plans are expected to be top of the agenda, and someone who won't be in attendance, though, is Sue Gray, despite just being named the Prime Minister's special envoy for the nations and regions. Let's bring in Rob Powell to discuss about all of this. So again, remind us what this gathering is.
Yeah, it's a forum that was first suggested, actually, in a big review that Gordon Brown did. I think he wanted it to have kind of a few more legal teeth to it. It's a little bit of a watered-down version of what he wanted. Essentially an avenue where the First Ministers of Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland come together with the UK Prime Minister and also the mayors from the various combined authorities around England to essentially discuss what the shared priorities are. It's sort of an avenue where they can focus on priorities moving forward. I thought listening to Kate Forbes, the Deputy First Minister, earlier, she sounded a little bit sceptical about what could potentially come out of it. I mean, there's plenty of scope for tension. The SNP have been pretty hard on Labour recently. They're going into Holyrood
They probably
elections.
don't want it to be too successful.
Exactly. Well, if you're in favour of independence, anything that's locking the union together is the enemy in a way. I think there's also a more upfront political motive for the SNP, is that they're training their fire on Labour ahead of the Holyrood elections, because that's who they're fighting in 18 months' time. So they're trumpeting a lot about investment. One person that won't be there today, though, as you say, is Sue Gray, the ex-Number 10 Chief of Staff. You spoke to Pat McFadden about her a little bit earlier, and this is what he said.
Sue's been through quite a lot in the last few weeks. I worked with her. She's a great colleague. She's taken a short break now, and I think we should allow her the time and privacy to do that.
And what's on the week ahead now?
So I think
more of this investment theme.
Yeah, we are going to see this sort of long ramp up to the budget, I think, which started about a week ago, with the government wanting to talk about investment, both coming in from the public funds, which was what we were talking about a week ago with carbon capture and storage and things like that, but also how that is sort of bringing about private investment as well. You got a sense, I think, a week ago of them trying to pivot slightly in their messaging from the doom and gloom talk about fiscal black holes to talking about potentially racking up more borrowing to catalyse investment. And I think that's going to be the story of the budget, if you like. It's going to be, when it comes to the public finances, quite a sombre picture, but Rachel Reeves may be trying to strike a more upbeat note when it comes to investment. I guess the question is, with this investment summit coming next week, are they putting the cart before the horse, in that, when we don't know what's happening with things like capital gains tax, you could do all this work to drum up investment and then put a load of stuff in the budget that puts people off.
Was the date of that summit set by the last government or by this Labour government, to be just a couple of weeks before the budget?
You know what? That's a very good question, and I don't have the answer to it.
There we go. And this is our last chat this hour, so I'll be tuning in to Sky News Today, as I always do if I'm not presenting it, because it's such a great slot to see what you say in the next hour. Rob, as always, pleasure. Thanks. Thank you. Still coming on The Breakfast Show, we are joined by the creators of the musical Operation Mincemeat, based on a World War II deception operation. It's been wildly successful, that musical. Looking forward to that discussion. Plus, we speak to the Paralympian hoping to reach new heights on a mission into space, and conservationists warn nature's fast approaching dangerous and irreversible tipping points. We'll discuss.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos, analysis up at 6%. Podcasts, watching us live. Joins us live all in one place and all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
I'm Stuart Ramsey and I'm Sky's chief correspondent. Free wherever you get your news.
I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C. Sky News, get the full story first.
I'm Katie Spencer and I'm Sky News' arts and entertainment correspondent.
I'm Lisa Dowd and I'm one of Sky's Midlands correspondents. The reason I do this job is because you never know where it's going to lead.
Trust in politics is at an all-time low. What's going wrong and can we fix it? It's from Liz. She wants to know, why is there still no sign of the Labour Party electing a woman as leader?
It's sort of embarrassing. You know, it takes a very strong man to be leader, but it takes an even stronger man to support a woman for leader.
If you want to be mean to politicians, like, crack on. The activists that go out and make elections happen, I kind of feel like just don't be horrible to them. Be polite to them in the same way that they're polite to you.
Keir Starmer has got us into government with a big majority. He was completely clear before the election that he wasn't going to be able to do the two-child benefit policy, but I wouldn't be surprised if it isn't an early thing that comes along.
I went up to Gordon Brown and said, hello. No, yes, where is it? I said, found all these Tory candidates breaking land. Let me see it, let me see it. This is brilliant, brilliant.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. A new start to Sunday. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Welcome back. Let's return again to our top story. We told you earlier how Israeli strikes in central Beirut killed at least 22 people overnight and wounded 117 others. It's the deadliest Israeli attack on the Lebanese capital since the start of the conflict. Our international correspondent Alex Rossi is now at the site of the attack. Alex, talk us through what you're witnessing there.
Well, it is a scene here of chaos, really, and confusion. There's a lot of mechanical equipment clearing rubble. We'll just walk you in now. This is an area in central Beirut. It's a residential area. To the side of me here, you can see the buildings, the blocks of flats where people would have been living. And here, as we come around here, this is the residential, or one of the residential buildings that was targeted. And you can see it's just been completely collapsed. Just a mass, really, of rubble now. This is as far as we're able to go in at the moment, because there are fears that some of the other buildings around here could collapse. So the search and rescue teams have actually pulled back from this area, but there are fears there are still people trapped underneath the rubble. But I was speaking to some of them earlier, and they say realistically the chance of finding any more survivors is really very, very remote indeed. But the thing to bear in mind about this place is that we are not in the southern suburbs of Dahir. We're not in the Hezbollah stronghold. people had come to this area from the southern suburbs because they thought it would be relatively safe, but that has all changed now. So there's a great deal of confusion and panic here. We've watched people come out, leaving with their suitcases to try and find safety in other places. And that sound of the Israeli drone above us is just constant as well, which is quite unnerving for many people. We'll just move in past this this bulldozer, and you can see here the extent of the damage. Perhaps you can make out, if we look past where we think the airstrike, the centre of the airstrike, it's still smouldering over there. But more than 100 people have been injured, some of them very seriously, now being treated in hospital. Now, the reports are that the target of this was a Hezbollah leader called Wafik Safar. According to sources, Hezbollah sources, he has survived this assassination attempt. But clearly the Israeli campaign to decapitate Hezbollah is continuing. Whether it has an effect on the level of the resistance in the south of the country remains to be seen. We understand there's still very, very fierce fighting there. But at the moment, they're trying to clear away this. The chance, as I was saying, the chance of finding survivors extraordinarily remote.
Alex, just talk us through a bit more of the mood. I know you've been getting there this morning and going through the rest of Beirut to get to that location. What has been the mood of what is, I think you said earlier, the most deadly attack specifically on Beirut so far?
Yeah, I mean, people are very, very frightened about what is coming next. They fear that the Israeli invasion is expanding in the south of the country. They've seen these attacks now in Beirut. This one, as I was saying, in central Beirut. It's not a Hezbollah stronghold. People had come here because they thought, people who've been displaced from other areas of the city had come here because they thought it was safe, but clearly that is not the case. So people are very, very worried, very, very anxious indeed about what will come next in this conflict. And at the moment, of course, it shows no sign of ending. I mean, people are very, very aware of that. And it's been going on now for, more than a year. Many people from the south have been displaced. Beirut, as a city, is it's a vibrant place ordinarily, but at the moment it's desperately broken. You travel along the Corniche by the Mediterranean, normally a beautiful place where lots of Lebanese people go to walk or run in the morning, but it's just crowded now with displaced people living in makeshift tents who've had to move from the south of the country. More than 1 million people have been displaced as a result of the fighting. So, you can understand people are very, very anxious, very concerned about what comes next, but also very, very frightened.
On that note, Alex, I mean, obviously we covered extensively the way in which the British government urged all British nationals to evacuate Beirut entirely. What is the guidance now in and around these previously less dangerous parts of Beirut to the locals?
Well, I mean, that's a question that people are asking. It's, where do you go that is safe? I spoke to one family that were living, they were in one of the buildings just behind where the digger is working, and we saw them coming through the smoke with their suitcases, and I asked them, where are you going to go now? And they said, well, they're going to go somewhere near the sea where there are no buildings, and they're going to try and set up a tent and some shelter there and stay there. I mean, the guidance to people, to Western nationals, as you were saying, is to leave Lebanon as soon as possible. The airport is still operating. Various countries have laid on flights. There are still commercial flights available, although getting a seat is becoming very, very difficult indeed. But in terms for Lebanese, I mean, the advice is to keep moving, and that's what people are doing. If in areas that were safe that are no longer safe, you need to leave. The other thing to bear in mind is that Israel as well is also putting in place evacuation orders. In Dahir, this is the Lebanese stronghold in southern Beirut, they put in place 2 evacuation orders last night, telling people to leave those areas, get at least 500 meters away. But as we have seen in previous strikes, even if you follow the evacuation orders, there really is no guarantee of safety.
Alex, thank you, as always, for your fantastic reporting there, and do stay safe yourself. Alex Rossi there, our international correspondent in Beirut. Switching focus now, thankfully, and Olivier Award-winning musical Operation Mincemeat is transferring to Broadway after receiving much critical acclaim over here. The musical, which started out at a small fringe theatre, will open in New York early next year, and it's all based on a true story of deception from World War II.
It's a musical so popular that its run in the West End keeps being extended.
Operation Mincemeat, which is a musical I want to go and see.
The comedy special has had a staggering 64 5-star reviews. That is a big poster.
It's a real triumph. I think this will go on to Broadway.
We're joined now by the co-writers of the musical, Natasha Hodgson and Zoe Roberts, and co-artistic director David Cummings. A very good morning to you all. Thanks so much for joining us.
Morning. We are so delighted to be here. Thank you.
I have to admit that because this sort of came out and got such coverage in terms of a big way on the West End after the movie came out, I thought that it followed the movie. But you're going to correct me on that, and this is
certainly are.
Yeah. I know, but it makes it all the more impressive.
What was weird is we found out that there was a movie being made of it. I think it was like the day before we opened our first ever show.
Which is when?
Which is in 2019 at the New Diorama Theatre near Warren Street in London, and we were like, oh God. Is this good? Is this good? Is this bad? And then, in the end, it sort of transpired that it's kind of lovely because I think theirs is a totally different take. The film is different, and ours is much more of a kind of rip-roaring comedy. We want to really milk the kind of craziness of the story. It's such a crazy true story. The characters, there's so many different people that are involved in it, and so I think it's good to have a couple of different takes on the same total.
And Zoe, obviously this is based on true life. How long, therefore, was it in the works? When did you guys get the idea to turn a World War II story into a comedic musical?
I mean, it honestly feels like we've been working on it since World War II. No, I think we've been working on it since about 2017. And we first performed it in 2019, as Tash said, and then we've kind of been developing it over various iterations over the past 5,000 years, it feels like now. And then we got it into the West End, last year, and it's been an unbelievable ride since then.
And from the West End to Broadway, pressure. Is there pressure, do you think, moving it stateside?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we kind of say that Broadway is kind of the Olympics of musical theatre. It's the home of the art form, so...
the West End might be able to hear you?
Well, I think, the West End's a strong contender. But there is a certain level of pressure, but it's obviously such an exciting step for the musical, and we're ready for the adventure if they'll have us.
Natasha, do you have to change the story, or perhaps more importantly, the humour in it? I mean, it's obviously a very British World War II story, this.
It is, but I think... I don't think, no. I'm going to come out strong. I think we're going to let the New York audiences kind of show us what they think of what we've done. And I think because we are quite, dynamic, we'll rewrite things on the fly. If we get there and it seems like, actually, that bit doesn't really land, this or is working really well, we can sort of, change it as we go. But I think we really have faith in the show. We've had lots of American audiences come and really love it. And I think the fact that it is so quintessentially British, I think there's something that chimes really nicely for, hopefully for a US audience, that they kind of want to see something slightly different and more British on the stages.
But so what do you think is going on with theatregoers in the US? Growth from, I think it's 2% in 2023, now reaching 14%. What's happening at the moment on the scene?
Well, I'm not
very
an
nice
expert
statistics.
on
Great statistics.
Brought the numbers.
I came with my own statistics, but obviously. I think we know a lot more about the UK theatre scene, and what we've seen is this real bounce back since COVID, that people were suddenly actually desperate to be in rooms together, kind of with that sense of community watching live art happen. And I think that's probably what's being reflected in the US, is this kind of, after being kind of frozen as an industry for that period, then you have this kind of boom again of exciting stories and original stories and hopefully joyful stories like ours that people need that. You know, the world is tough, the world is getting tougher, and actually getting in a room together and laughing with a few hundred people, as simple as it sounds, is really cathartic.
They want to laugh, they want to cry. We really wanted to make a show that let people do both of those things.
And David, it's going to be on in both places still, or?
Yeah, so the show's still on at the Fortune Theatre in the West End, and then from February 15th, it'll be on at the John Golden in New York. So there'll be two versions of the show at the same time, happening 5 hours apart. If you get the red eye, you can probably catch both 2 days.
Well, that would be an expensive day out. The tickets are not cheap. Plus a flight. It'd be an interesting choice to go for it. But hopefully people will choose to take it in either of the locations. Natasha, Zoe, David, thank you all so much for joining us. And good luck as you cross the pond with the show. Still to come here on The Breakfast Show this morning, we will speak to the para-astronaut hoping to make history with his mission into space. We'll be right back. Welcome back. A British Paralympian sprinter is hoping to become the world's first astronaut with a disability. John McFall, who has a prosthetic leg, has been training with the European Space Agency and delighted to say he joins us now. John, an astronaut and a Paralympian. I mean, way to put us totally to shame. What an extraordinary set of qualifications there. Talk to us about the background, though. Originally, growing up, you wanted to go into the armed forces.
Yeah, that's right. Good morning. Hi. Yeah, growing up as a kid, I grew up in a military family, and that was sort of the stories, some of the stories I heard and the life I was exposed to. It seemed quite appealing to me. So yeah, the army was on my horizons as a teenager, and then following a motorcycle accident when I was 19, that became no longer possible.
And that motorcycle accident gave you what injury? And then again, you still took a step to kind of try and make a tragedy something that you could capitalise on almost.
Yeah, so that motorcycle accident resulted in the amputation of my right leg above the knee. And having loved sport before that accident, it was an automatic choice for me to get back into sport. And it was actually a very, very powerful vehicle for rehabilitation for me. And I got back into running. It took me on a tremendous journey where I competed at the Paralympic Games in Beijing as a sprinter, as a runner, and I won a bronze medal in Beijing.
John, so great to have you on Sky News Breakfast. I just want to get an understanding as to how you went from sport to becoming an astronaut. It seems to most of us quite an extraordinary jump. How did you do it? Why did you do it? So many questions.
Well, I've always been a hugely curious person about the way the world works, problem solving, engineering, science. It's always been an interest of mine. And actually, following my career as an athlete, this sort of drove my post-sport career as well, because I then applied to medical school and graduated as a doctor in 2014 and became a doctor and then trained as a trauma and orthopedic surgeon, which is what I'd been doing up until I came across this back in 2021. And really, I was quite happy working as a trauma and orthopedic surgeon. Then all of a sudden this opportunity came across my path, and it had the challenge, the adventure, the science, the exploration, and the lifelong learning that I really found attractive from a career or a job prospect. And so I applied to the European Space Agency back in 2021. And uniquely, the European Space Agency they were recruiting for a new class of astronauts back in 2021. And uniquely, were also looking for someone with a physical disability, asking the question, is it possible for someone with a physical disability to be a professional astronaut?
And I mean, it's just, I left off that you're a trauma orthopedics surgeon as well.
Don't worry about it.
To put us even more in the shade. But what's next? What's the next step in terms of finally realising this dream?
Well, I was employed by the UK Space Agency and the European Space Agency to do a feasibility study. So this is why I was recruited in the first place. And since I started working at the European Space Agency last June, we have done a feasibility study looking at what are the requirements for spaceflight, human spaceflight, and then looking at how me with my physical disability and my prosthesis, we can meet those requirements. So we're not changing the requirements for spaceflight. We're making sure that someone with a physical disability like mine can still meet them. So we've done that, and we're currently finishing off writing up this study. And the aim is to present this to the European Space Agency member states, so 22 member states across Europe, to garner support for the work that we have done, and hopefully convert this into a flight opportunity. Because really, our fly study will not be completed until we get the first person with a physical disability going to the International Space Station to live and work in space on a long duration space mission. So this is for 6 months. This isn't just about going to space for 10 days and floating around. This is about someone with a disability like mine being a fully integrated crew member in the International Space Station.
John, you're such an inspiration. I wonder your message before you go to any little boys or girls watching now with physical disabilities, and they look at you and they think, one day maybe I could do that.
Do you know what? There's some words I always live by that I came across not long after my amputation that came from my parents, actually. They gave me a gift the Christmas after I lost my leg. And I tore the wrapping paper off his gift and opened it up. And it was an atlas. My parents had given me this big A3 atlas because I just loved exploring. And I opened this atlas up, and written on the inside of this atlas was, always go the extra mile. Life will reward you. And I really stand by that.
Wow, fantastic stuff, John. And I hope you get to to leave the Atlas, as it were, and see all this through. But either way, just extraordinary, inspiring stuff. Thanks so much for joining us.
Pleasure.
John McFall there. Well, it's now time for some of the sport. And James, last hour you had to follow Barack Obama. This hour, an even more impressive character in John McFall. So I hope all of the sport is positive today for us. Help you in your journey on that.
I thought after Barack, I thought it was more realistic. After John, no chance whatsoever. No way. Mixture. Some positive, some negative, I think it's best to say. Football, no good. Cricket, very, very good. Cricket, really impressive, actually. And if you look at yesterday, there was just records galore. I mean, the fact that England scored over 800 runs in an innings is just absolutely unbelievable. So, yes, plenty of cricket to come in the Sport Plus. We'll recap on what was a very disappointing night for England's footballers at Wembley.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality. Getting more people more active. Live life with Vitality.
When I joined Wigan, I needed time. You know, the first thing they asked me is to change the style of play. But I need time to change the style of play. I need time to recruit players who could play the style of play. I need time to do coaching session to improve the players. People expect you to come and then change everything like that. It doesn't work like that. When you want to play the style of play that everyone wants to play, you know, beautiful football, you need the players who can do that. As coaches or managers, we need to keep pushing. Whenever we have opportunity to do well, we have to do well, of course. But before you do well, you need the opportunity, of course.
Being the first Black African to manage a professional English club, how proud are you of that? How do you reflect on that now?
Very proud, very, very proud. Of course, I knew that it was going to be a huge challenge, but in my life, you know, I had a lot of setbacks, I had a lot of tough moments, tough time, but I think what is very important for me is my resilience. You know, during my career I had some tough time, you know, and but never give up. I kept pushing, you know, and that's what I'm gonna do, you know, and thinking that I was the first Black African is huge, but I haven't finished the job. And I'm hungrier to go back. There's no many Black managers who has been have the opportunity and had the time to work. You know, we had Patrick Vieira, who done a really good job at Crystal Palace when he joined, and then, you know, get sacked after. We hope that, you know, we can be treated the same. I think it's...
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality.
James, thanks so much for that. Well, still to come here on The Breakfast Show, a warning from conservationists that nature is in free fall as a result of human activity. We'll be right back.
Weeknights on Sky News.
This is your chance. Tell people.
Welcome to the Politics Hub.
Our police force has apologised.
If you want to find out about Grimsby, you come to the docks.
I'm live in Jerusalem.
Are you not concerned that that could lead to all-out war?
Hello there, good evening. There are fears of an upsurge in violence. What's at stake here?
You are watching the press preview, a first look at the front pages as they arrive.
I'm David Blevins, and I'm Sky's senior Ireland correspondent. It takes 60 minutes to cross the Irish Sea. It took the British monarchy a century. I've spent 30 years reporting the journey from conflict to peace.
The political parties of Northern Ireland have reached agreement.
If there's anyone who might know how to fix Northern Ireland's devolved government, it's the American architect.
Changes in circumstance require changes in approach.
The end of the political stalemate, the start of a new chapter for Northern Ireland.
I confirm that I am willing to take up the office of First Minister. My election to the post of First Minister demonstrates the change that's happening on this island.
Catholics and Protestants on different sides, now facing the same threat.
If we both contract COVID-19 and end up in hospital, religion's nothing.
People here are adept at finding hope amid adversity. That's the spirit of a place that punches way above its weight. We help you understand the world with us. A toxic blue-green algae now poisoning Loch Ness. It's breaking your heart what has happened here.
It is.
This is a vital resource, a national treasure, now fighting for its very life. They are effectively surrounded by Northern Ireland, and that makes this the most unlikely of international frontiers.
If there's a hard border, I think it'll cripple the country.
Winter is coming. Welcome to Winterfell. It's an iconic location in this globally acclaimed drama. Ophelia was the most powerful hurricane this far east in the Atlantic on record. Sky News, the full story first.
I say, bring it on.
With America divided and tensions running high, get ready for an election like no other.
Join our teams as we follow the campaign trail as America decides.
We will win, win, win.
Get closer to the action this US election with full reaction and analysis.
Sky News, the full story first.
This is the game changer seat. Look, it even comes with binoculars. Fly Emirates, fly better.
Thank you.
Welcome back. Conservationists are warning that nature is approaching dangerous and irreversible tipping points as a result of human activity. The WWF say there have been a 73% decline in global wildlife populations over the last 50 years. I'm joined now by the Chief Scientific Advisor at WWF, Mike Barrett. Mike, that's an astonishing statistic.
It's a really shocking statistic. So that's a measure of the Living Planet Index, which is, it measures the average size of monitored vertebrate wildlife populations across the globe since 1970. It's a data set with over 5,000 different species, 35,000 different populations around the world. And as you say, this shows that nature is in freefall. But actually all measures of nature, whether that is species diversity, risk of extinction, extent and intactness of habitat, all those metrics are heading the same way. So it does show that nature's in free fall. But actually what the report also shows, it contains the data which explains why this is happening. And this is primarily about the loss and fragmentation of natural habitat, overexploitation of wildlife, all driven by our global food and agriculture system. And more than that, what we also now understand is that this pressure that we're applying to entire sort of natural systems, ecosystems, is reducing their resilience. I mean, nature usually can bounce back from a lot of what we throw at it, but now when you start to superimpose climate change on what we have done to the natural world, we see ecosystems at risk of these tipping points, at risk of collapse, and actually we're starting to see that play out in real time in plain sight in the Amazon right now.
Mike, I always like to look for the hope in a story. Who do you think are the saviours of nature? You know, we think about Sir David Attenborough, Chris Packham, or do you think it's bottom up, kids at school, that actually that's where the message has to be driven home?
Actually, I think it's all of those things, and what we do see is that, you know, conservation can provide successes. I mean, we're seeing, for example, more turtles returning to nests on Greek islands. We're even seeing bluefin tuna returning to oceans off the coast of Cornwall. But what we do now clearly understand is that conservation alone can't be enough, because we've got to change some of these key drivers of the loss of nature. So that's the food system, the energy system, and our finance systems. And that requires political and business leadership. And just one example, as things currently stand, despite the fact that we know that the UK is one of many countries helping drive deforestation around the world through the commodities that we import, In the UK, it's still perfectly legal to import deforesting commodities, even if they're produced illegally in their country of origin. So actually, one thing that we can all do is demand that our leaders step up now and introduce the legislation that we need to get deforesting commodities out of our supply chains.
Mike, we started with that statistic about how much wildlife has been diminished. Is it a case now of fighting just to keep it at that level, or can we replenish it? And if so, how quickly?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. What our science shows is that actually it is not yet too late. So we've got this risk of tipping points. We've actually got about a 5-year window now to do something about this. So there are a set of globally agreed targets to halt and reverse the loss of nature, avoid dangerous climate change, all due for delivery by 2030. So we've got 5 years left to do something about this. If we do scale up and act now, what is currently threatening us in terms of these tipping points, this could be a turning point. But the crucial thing is it's now. We've got this 5-year window, and what that means is that it's the job of our current business leaders, our current governments, to act. This isn't something that you can't kick the can down the line anymore.
Mike Barrett, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, finally, before we leave you this Friday morning, the Northern Lights have lit up the UK skies once again. The Met Office said there was a slight possibility of the lights being seen throughout the UK, including in southern England. Well, clear skies meant they were very visible indeed, as far south as Redhill in Surrey. Wow, pretty extraordinary. I was fast asleep, obviously.
I know everyone on this show, from directors,
we
producers...
always miss things like this.
Even James on Sport missed it.
Well,
but I did leave the house at 3 a.m. Well, he's always got something to say on something, hasn't he? But listen, I left the house at 3 a.m. this morning and the sky was glorious, full of stars. It was beautiful. So I had something.
And it's now brightened up because it's 10 a.m. We are out of time. Up next, Sky News Today.
Bye.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation